Hello everyone, X4 here, and welcome to JoJolion Chapter 108 Review and Discussion, which could potentially be the penultimate chapter of JoJolion, which we will discuss later on. But yes, guys, it definitely feels like things are wrapping up, and this is certainly the beginning of the end. And we'll discuss all about where I think JoJolion's going to end, how we move on from this chapter, and of course, what happened in the chapter. This is a very decisive chapter. Some people hate it, some people are liking it, some people are questioning Araki's abilities, other people still have faith, and we'll talk all about that this month. But for now, guys, we have JoJolion 108, The Last Calamity, and the cover page is very nice, just Yasuo standing in the debris of the Higashikata estate with the narration, "This is a story about breaking a curse," which was the first words ever uttered in JoJolion, I believe, way back in JoJolion Chapter 1 a decade ago in 2011. Those were the first words we ever saw in this part. This is a story about breaking a curse, and things come full circle in this chapter, so it's very exciting stuff. So without further ado, guys, let's just jump right into it, as I'm very excited to discuss this chapter, talk about what happened in the chapter, as well as how we are going to continue on from here, and how long I think is left in JoJolion, and what potentially could be going on in the future chapters, if there even is going to be a handful of future chapters, maybe just one or two. So getting right on, moving on from the cover page, we have some narration in the top right that says, "Higashikata Kato's attack, Tsurugi!" and exclamation points. And we just see some motifs around the Higashikata estate. We see those wonderful trees that everyone loves to theorize about. I believe that is the same tree that is around the land that has mythical powers, that's able to perform equivalent exchanges. This tree's been seen many times throughout JoJolion. One of the most predominant scenes was when Kato had the exchange with that dying boy to save Jobin. The tree was there, so I believe that's around where that's located. As well as we see Tsurugi's little cave entering thing, as well as some pots and plants. Could be a callback to the I Am a Rock arc, but nevertheless, just showing us around the Higashikata estate and all the property damage that has been done. And we jump right back into where we left off in Chapter 107, where we had that big reveal where Kato didn't necessarily intend on pursuing or attacking Tooru. She really only wanted to save her grandson, Tsurugi. And we see how that's coming in and how they're actually going to be able to exchange, and whether or not Tsurugi's going to be able to survive. Is the rock disease going to get cured? Are they going to fuse? All this stuff. And we finally get to see what actually happens with these two. And that whole resolution between Tsurugi and Tooru exchanging with each other is pretty much the bulk of the first half of this chapter. It's very fast paced. There's a lot of yelling. Tooru is very desperate, trying to see how he's going to come out of this situation alive, and if it's even possible for him to survive here. And we also see that Kato is trying her best to make sure this is a successful exchange, not only feeding Tsurugi the new Lokakaka, whatever you want to refer to it, but she is also sucking the sap out of the branches and pouring that through space trucking into Tsurugi's mouth. So really just assuring that Tsurugi has as much of this new Rokakaka as possible to make sure this is a successful exchange. And while Tsurugi is being drip fed this Rokakaka sap from space trucking, which is very interesting looking, you can see Tooru is definitely on the losing end of this exchange here. His face is crumbling to rock. Speaking of that, I'm wearing the Break Free Supply, my clothing brand's Calamity hoodie, which currently is out of stock. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know if we'll ever reprint this, but this is a cool Toro design of his face cracking, so I thought it was fitting to wear this hoodie for this review. So we all thought that since Kato isn't necessarily attacking or pursuing Tooru, it wouldn't make sense for the head doctor to be able to attack her or for a calamity to take place, but this chapter is of course the last calamity, so we see the head doctor coming out of nowhere pretty much and just trying to tackle Kato to the ground, but not before long the head doctor's face explodes, Toru's breaking off into bits, and this is kind of just our sayonara to Tooru as we get some really graphic body horror of him just completely crumbling, the head doctor completely crumbling, and this definitely being the end of Tooru, but not necessarily the head doctor, as there's a bit to discuss about what the head doctor even is later in this chapter. And as Tooru is completely crumbling and dying in front of us, we get his last words where he's just relaying to Kato how important and how powerful this Rokakaka is, and how she's pretty much wasting it, or what he thinks is her wasting it just to save one person. He's like, you don't understand the power of this, what it could be used for. This is the only one in existence. This is the only time we ever have the opportunity to use this fruit and what its possibilities are, and using it to save your granddaughter or grandson is pretty much just wasting it. And he's explaining that, no matter where you search, the deepest jungles anywhere in the world, it won't be found again, which is pretty much true, because if you remember how this new Rokakaka formed was with Josufume's Soft and Wet when he regrafted the branch. So I'm not sure if Josuke's new softened wet would be able to create the same exact fruit. Maybe if they went through a ton of R&D and experimented with all these fruits, but yeah, this was kind of a one of a kind, and there will never be anything like it again in this world, and we're using it to save Tsurugi. And even before this, we've really been using this fruit very liberally. We've kind of just been wasting one of the most powerful things in the JoJo universe in terms of how this fruit might be able to lead to like immortality and just how divine this fruit is, essentially. So like we had Yasuo and Joshu use a piece of the fruit, and then Toru ate a piece of the fruit, and now this is the last one right here. So at least it's being used for a good cause, kind of, to save Tsurugi, which is good. And it's hilarious that as Toru's going off about this, yelling at Kato, Kato shushes him. Out of all the things she could have done, she hits him with a shush, and she's like, I will take this sin, you need to shut the hell up. And Toru realizes that he's not going to get through to Kato, so he tries to get Yasuo. He's like, oh, yeah, Yasuo, you're here, like, remember all the memories we have, you try to stop. And Yasuo is like, no shot, Toru, you're done here. And in the last bit of breaths he has, you see his face crumbling, this really sick panel where his eye is exploding, pleading to Yasuo to try to save him. And all the bad things Toru has done so far, all the people he's killed, all the despair he's cast upon the Higashikata family, no one is going to save you, dog. You are here by yourself. And then he lets out the last words from Toru is, Yasuo, stop this goddamn bitch already, god damn it. And boom, Toru is blasted off into bits as his hair and body and clothing is crumbling, and we see this panel of him just disintegrating into air, and Toru is gone with the wind. And this is certainly the last we will see of Toru, and this is his final goodbye in the last bit we'll see of him, but not necessarily the head doctor, as we'll see later in the chapter. But I thought this was a very satisfying ending to Toru, seeing him just really desperately plead to everyone around him. You know, the head doctor isn't working for him anymore, and this is how we defeat him, which is pretty cool. As I mentioned in the end of the last chapter, I thought it was very smart how Araki wrote this and tied in that the way that we defeat this main villain is through saving Tsurugi. So both of those things just came full circle, it tied well together, and I thought it was really like the perfect way to kill Toru off, because I thought, like, you know, Josuke does have this new ability here. It would not really seem that satisfying if the head doctor just got defeated and Toru got defeated by Josuke's new Deus Ex Machina ability, which pretty much as it is, as we see, there's not really much of an explanation for what it is later on in this chapter, or at least from what we've seen so far in the part. So I'm still not 100% on that. I still don't like how Josuke just got that new ability, Soft and Wet Go Beyond, pretty much out of nowhere. Looking a little bit more into it and reading in like the context of all JoJolion, it does have some thematic qualities, but nowhere near as much as like Gold Experience Requiem, which was like a super OP ability, but thematically worked really well with part 5. But maybe with time, and as we are able to like reread JoJolion and learn more about the themes and how Araki's going to end this off, maybe it will make more sense. But yeah, I really didn't want Toru to just be defeated by Soft and Wet Go Beyond, boom, you're dead. So really awesome how Toru's death results in the life of Tsurugi and the breaking of the curse, as we'll see later on. And a nice little detail is as Toru is disintegrating off and dying, what he sees is a hornet, one of the bees, and that is the last thing he sees. He's just seeing things, he's just like memories. It's kind of funny how like when we saw the history of the rock humans, like they spend a certain portion of their life in a beehive and being raised by bees, so it's kind of like your life flashing before your eyes, and he sees the people that raised him, his mother bee, before he dies. And there's a little bit more of thematic relevance and just the themes of Toru as a way, as sort of the last inner monologue we hear from him is, oh, I see it was a memory of mine, as Toru was going on the last chapter about memories. So memories and everlasting legacies and something like that might be related to Toru and sort of the theme of his character. But the chapter just came out last month, and there is a big monologue from Araki, narration from Araki in this chapter that goes over JoJolion and everything. So I probably won't pick up on every little detail or the thematic relevance or, you know, the meaning of every little thing in this chapter. Again, it's just something we're going to have to sit on, as some people are considering this chapter rushed, maybe the ending's being rushed, but we're just going to have to wait and see, sit with it a little bit. I might have to go through a full reread of JoJolion to really see how I feel about, you know, Toru being the final antagonist and what his character is all about, the themes of it, how it's related, maybe if there's a dichotomy between him and Josuke in some way. But I'm definitely going to, at some point, come back to like the ending of JoJolion, or at least these bit of chapters, and have probably a lot more to say in terms of the entire context of JoJolion. But for now, I'm just trying to get you guys my review and what I think of this chapter. So again, I apologize if I don't pick up on every little detail and what it means in the whole of JoJolion. But continuing on with the chapter, after Toru disintegrates into the air and is presumably dead, we get this really somber silence where we just see the results of everything that's happened within the past hour at the Higashikata estate. You see the fruit is is on the ground with space trucking all around it. There's no more fruit left. Joshu on the ground, and the family sort of embracing Tsurugi as we now see that he has been healed. But unfortunately, this chapter is called The Last Calamity, so we're expecting some sort of devastating blow, and what that is that the calamity that encountered Kato as the saw that Toru was holding in the past 2 chapters, threatening to kill her with, when he was being destroyed and falling off, the saw went flying into the air, and I guess that was the final calamity, it landing on Kato and being jabbed into her abdomen, which is very unfortunate because everyone was like, oh god, is Kato really gonna die? But we don't get that confirmed or denied this chapter, and considering ambulances arrive at the end of the chapter, I would definitely say that Kato's morality is up in the air right now. It could live, could die. It's definitely not as bad as, say, Kei Nijimura, who is completely dead back at the hospital, who just got the cane right through her head, or say Jobin, who's been bleeding out for pretty much the entire day now. So I think those 2 characters are definitely dead, but Kato's morality, we'll have to see in the next chapter, is why I think we'll get at least 1 or 2 more chapters of JoJolion, at least 1 obviously, because this isn't the last chapter, but yeah, that's definitely something we'll need to see resolved in future chapters, is whether or not Kato lives or dies. And it really does suck that Kato is potentially going to die here, because I thought the whole thing was that she's not trying to pursue Toru, so the head doctor wouldn't be able to attack her, because all she was trying to do was save her grandson. So I guess whatever, that's not relevant anymore, and she does encounter a calamity, because although what she was trying to do did result in the death of Toru, so he was able to protect himself and harness the power of Wonder of You in some way to give a final calamity to the person that killed him, Kato. And I think it's really interesting that the final blow of this, guys, Toru's the main villain. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. I'm not going to keep doing the whole oh, I don't know if he's the main villain or not. At least in the context right now, yeah, Toru was the last bad guy. The Wonder of You, such a powerful ability, such an interesting character with lore, with connections to all the other characters. So the one thing about JoJolion is that it's so, the focus is so distributed between the cast in general, and it's so out of the ordinary for the main villain to be defeated by someone like Kato, who isn't even a main cast member. We haven't seen her in 25 chapters. We only have ever seen her in 3 chapters before, and then she comes out of nowhere to save the day and defeat the main villain. I think that's very interesting writing from Araki, and although it's cool and it works for JoJolion, I miss Josuke. I wish Josuke was a little bit more involved in the story, and this was more of a story of JoJo, but of course, this is the Higashikata family. There's so many members that need so much more attention, but yeah, I still don't know how I feel about Kato being the one that gets the finishing blow to at least Toru, but not necessarily the head doctor. But continuing on with the chapter, things are certainly looking grim for Kato Higashikata. Although Toru is defeated, she has a saw in her stomach, she's bleeding out, she's lying over, crying, and taking what looks to be her last breath, as one of the last things she sees before she closes her eyes is the portrait of her family and her late husband as well, as the family screams out, "Mom!" And then we get into the second half of the chapter, which definitely feels like Araki wrapping up the part, and all this dialogue that Araki shot out at the end of this chapter is what made people think that Araki is rushing JoJolion or rushing the ending. But yeah, it definitely seems like Araki is getting into bringing things full circle with JoJolion and bringing this part to a conclusion. As we go through a sequence of panels that shows the despair that's been bestowed upon the Higashikata family within the past few hours, just this day really, all the damage that's been done to the home and the state that Toru and the head doctor and all these calamities has left the family in. As although Toru is gone, there is still just so much damage done and the possibilities of if this family can even continue from here. And the dialogue goes, JoJolion, this is a story about breaking a curse. There are things that exist in this world that eyes cannot see, that is related to Josuke's, of course, soft and wet go beyond, sort of a recurring theme that's been being relayed throughout JoJolion's past few chapters. In JoJolion, that is the shape of a person's heart. And what I believe Araki is referring to, that is someone's true intentions, as way before in chapter 83, Araki had also included some dialogue that was when a shape of someone's heart changes, that can also influence a change in their stand or something. So that's pretty much just the shape of someone's heart is if they're good or evil in a way. So there's some things you can't see. You can't really see if someone's a bad person or not. I guess that's where he's going for that, the shape of people's heart, their true intentions in a way. And we're also being reminded of the sacrifices the Higashikata family had to make to be able to defeat this enemy, and all of the despair that was thrown upon this family just within the past few days lately, as we see the effects of how Daya is dealing with this, what's going on with Jobin as he's dying, Hato, Joshu, and Mitsuba, and just sort of an insight on how all of those characters are thinking. Like Hato, for example, has to see her mother lying dead on the floor with this saw through her abdomen, and how Mitsuba needs to see her husband dying in the garage and everything. So just reminding us of how f***ed up everything is, really. And continuing on through this sequence, seeing all of the pain that our characters have endured, all of the sacrifices that have been made, and all of the damage done to the Higashikata home, we see that it's not all despair, as it wasn't all for nothing, and all the sacrifices aren't in vain. As we see that Tsurugi does have the smooth, shiny skin, and within the glimmering of Tsurugi's skin, we see a silver lining of hope for this family and a potential future to move on from this despair. And as we see the big reveal that because at that moment the curse had been broken. Tsurugi has been healed from the rock disease, no longer suffering. It was a successful exchange from Tooru, so now that Tsurugi is healed at this point, which is cool, but like, I don't know how that translates to the curse being broken, because didn't like necessarily the same thing happen with Jobin, how Jobin went through an equivalent exchange to heal himself, but the curse still affected Tsurugi. So I wonder if the new Rokakaka is so powerful in a way that it's actually going to be able to affect future generations. So it's not just Tsurugi being healed temporarily in this moment. Even if Tsurugi goes on to have kids, his eldest son won't be affected. So I would like to think that's what Araki is saying here when the curse has been broken, because of course this isn't necessarily the same way Jobin was healed. This is this new powerful Rokakaka. So I guess we just need to assume that this is going to completely cure the Higashikata family and all future generations. So yeah, guys, everything JoJolion has been leading up to, the story about breaking a curse, this is how it happens. I feel like this could have been done way long ago and done way simpler, but I guess this is where Araki was going for it, and this is how the curse is going to be broken. And this is kind of where we get into the decisive nature of this part and how Araki went about writing a story about breaking a curse. So let me know what you guys think about it, if you thought it was handled well, if you thought it was handled poorly, if you thought it was dragged out, if it could have been done quicker, how you would have gone about it, how we could have maybe rewritten JoJolion in a way, but it was long-winded for sure, and it didn't all fit together, in my opinion, perfectly well. But yeah, this is how the Higashikata curse was broken. I myself personally don't really know how I feel about all this. The chapter just came out yesterday. These are still really my initial thoughts, and there's still more to be seen from JoJolion continuing on. But for now, a little rough around the edges. Little rough. But of course, we'll have to see how the part continues and concludes from here. But continuing on from the whole curse being broken, like, pretty much that's the point of JoJolion. So now that the curse has been broken, that's why everyone's like, well, the part should probably be wrapping up here. There's no villain to defeat. We've already defeated Tooru. The curse has been broken. What else really is there that we need out of JoJolion? And the answer is not much. Honestly, the part could have ended in this chapter. It might have been a little rushed if it ended in this chapter, but it could have. But it's nice to see that there's still at least like 1 or 2 more chapters to wrap everything up and see where we go from here. But continuing on with the chapter, we get out of Araki's narration, him telling us that the curse has been broken, and although there is so much despair among the family right now, there is still hope, and that really what we've been working for and what this story is all about has finally been resolved. And we jump back into the context of the actual characters and what they're doing in real time as ambulances are arriving at the Higashikata estate, which is very good because, Kato didn't have a knife through her skull or anything, so it is possible in the next chapter to see her and maybe even Jobin and of course Norisuke. So like, before we've all been saying like, yeah, Jobin's dead, Jobin's for sure dead, but now that the ambulances are here, it's definitely still possible that all 3 characters could recover. But my prediction honestly is that Kato lives, Norisuke lives, and Jobin's probably dead because he's been bleeding out for quite a while, and a few characters have even stated that he's dead. So right when you think that, everything's been resolved, the curse has been broken, Tsurugi has been healed, Tooru, the villain that we've been fighting for the past 2 years now, has finally been destroyed in the most perfect way possible by healing Tsurugi of his rock disease, we see the wonder of you with no face, kind of, called to Rene Magritte painting. We see the wonder of you coming out from underneath an ambulance, coming out of Norisuke, and like, it's like, oh my god, is this guy seriously still alive? Like, where's Tooru? Where's the wonder of you? And it's just kind of like, it's still going. Like, the endless calamity truly is endless, but it's kind of interesting the way that Araki is going with the concept of calamity and what the wonder of you actually is. It's very interesting. So I didn't mention it, but a few pages ago, they were like, oh, Norisuke's not even hurt that much. It looked like Jobin held back, so Jobin never had really any intention of killing the father, killing Norisuke, so he'll be able to make a full recovery. But unfortunately, as we're like getting Norisuke some help, his body starts boiling like it looks like it's being affected by speed cane, and he's being attacked by a calamity as the head doctor's fingers are coming out of Norisuke's mouth, which is just like, okay, what the hell is happening here? Like, why is there a calamity? Tooru's gone. We can't even pursue him anymore. So why would a calamity be taking place in the first place? And following this, we get some very important narration from Araki that says, the form of the head doctor is calamity energy, a natural law of calamity. Even without a user to control it, the head doctor still will not disappear. The calamity is still going, or rather, the laws of calamity that are just things that exist in this world never go away. And the Wonder of You was an ability that allowed Toru to use it to make ends meet, or just like to harness his own ability. So I think that's a very interesting concept Araki is going for, and that the head doctor doesn't necessarily belong to Toru. It was just something he was able to control. And this calamity energy we're referring to is just kind of like the concept, calling back to like Steel Ball Run almost, like the black and white, how good things happen, bad things happen. It's just a law of nature in a way that as you live your life, you know, there's peaks and valleys, bad things happen, good things happen. You can't explain it, but most of the time it just balances you out. And I really like how Araki and JoJolion as a whole and Steel Ball Run kind of have that same thing of that just like naturally bad things are going to happen to you. And I guess that is the form of calamity energy. It's irrelevant if we're trying to pursue Toru here. I guess this is just showing that Norisuke's health is taking a turn for the worse, which is a calamity in a sense. And because we've already been fighting Toru and we've seen what the head doctor looks like, the characters are able to see that manifestation of calamity energy. So it definitely makes a lot more sense when you think about it, how of course calamities exist. Everybody encounters hard times. Bad things happen to good people, to bad people for no rhyme or reason whatsoever. That's just life. That's just how it works, unfortunately. So if you just think of that concept of calamities as a law of nature that happens to everyone that exists, it's just something that Toru is able to control. The way that I've been coping or thinking about it in the terms of the way that Araki's explained it is like, take Dio for example. Dio had to stand the world and he was able to control time. Time wasn't his stand. He was just able to harness it and control a law of nature. So the way that Dio and other characters have been able to control and manipulate time, when they die, time doesn't cease to exist or time doesn't go away. They were just able to control and manipulate a law of nature in some way. And I think that's a good way to think of how the Wonder of You was working. It just allowed Toru to, it's way more vague than the concept of time, but Toru is able to take a concept such as misfortune or calamities and able to harness that into a stand ability. So like I said, it's a lot more vague than time, but it's just the stand ability was allowing Toru to harness and use to his advantage a law of nature, which at least to me makes a bit more sense. So the question, why is Norisuke encountering a calamity right now? Why is he being destroyed? There's no intent of pursuing Toru whatsoever. The way I would think about this is like, say for example, like it looks like Norisuke is doing well, but then his health just suddenly takes a turn for the worse, which does happen sometimes when someone looks like they're doing well, and then just suddenly for some reason their health just turns to shit. That would be considered a calamity in some way. And since the characters have already fought against the head doctor and see what it looks like, they're able to see that manifestation of a calamity in some way. And it looks a little bit different as it doesn't have a face anymore. So they're seeing that lingering physical manifestation of the natural law of calamities. But thankfully, while this natural calamity, I guess we can refer to it as, it's not a pursue calamity or anything involved with Toru, it's just a natural calamity that's occurring, Josuke is here to save the day. He walked his ass all the way from the TG University Hospital, all the way back to the Higashikata State. Maybe he took an Uber or something, but he's here and he's able to just say F you to all the laws of nature and everything because his soap bubbles do not exist. And he's just able to say soft and wet, go beyond in a really awesome looking panel, one of the best panels we've seen in JoJolion, and a big aura barrage as he guides his invisible soap bubbles into Norisuke, and we see the head doctor and the law of calamity in a way leave his body and just be obliterated into thin air the same way that Toru was. And we see the final page of this chapter that says the calamity blasted to bits. So Josuke coming in to obliterate the laws of nature with his soft and wet go beyond is where I think things are getting a little bit decisive, and just how powerful this dude is, and how he's just able to come in and just say you to just nature, which is pretty crazy. And the chapter ends right there with Josuke and Yasuo together, not looking too happy to see each other, just very blank, emotionless faces. Josuke just looks like he just has murderous intent, and Yasuo just, she could have looked a little happier here, maybe not. Yeah, Kato did just get hurt, the family has so much despair, so maybe not a lot of things to smile about. But anyways, yeah. If you asked me, JoJolion could have ended right here. If Araki was really rushing things and really wanted to wrap up JoJolion quickly, I honestly wouldn't even really have that much of a problem with it if JoJolion ended right here, because of course there would be a lot of questions, but really every part of JoJo has ended with a lot of questions, as there's not really a lot of like epilogue to a lot of the parts. The anime spoiled this a bit, as the anime usually gives a little bit more of an epilogue. Like in part 4, there was so much more content in the ending of part 4 compared to the manga, but like the end of the part 4 manga, Jotaro and Joseph get on a boat and Josuke says, see ya, and we don't know what happens with Josuke, how his life goes on from here, or anything like that. So if Araki was truly rushing things, I honestly would be okay with JoJolion ending on this page right here, because it's like, you know, Josuke has this ability, he's able to destroy the calamities, we've overcome the curse, the Higashikata family has been cured from the curse, and we just assume where we go from here. Maybe Josuke forms a relationship with Yasuo. It wouldn't be the best ending, but it definitely could be an ending, and that's why I think JoJolion will be wrapping up very soon, especially considering this chapter was called The Last Calamity, and whether it was the attack that was bestowed upon Kato, or this attack that tried to hit Norisuke that Josuke blew to bits, whatever, those two, the two last calamities, unless Araki does some bullshit where it's like The Last Calamity Part 2, and then we enter a brand new arc where we're just entering endless last calamities. Freaking knock on wood, please don't do that, Araki, where Tooru comes back or something, but like, in my opinion, I think this could have been the penultimate chapter, but like, I don't see how Araki could do 2 more. He could definitely do 1 more chapter, maybe 1 more 40, 50, maybe even a 60-page chapter with a bit of an epilogue, but like, I don't see how Araki is going to get 6 more chapters of content out of this part, unless he introduces another enemy. And a lot of, like, from my point of view, there's no more enemies left to defeat in JoJolion, unless we get something really crazy like we did with part 7, where we do this 3 years of fighting Funny Valentine, and then like Diego Brando shows up with the world, and then we have that whole epilogue fighting Diego. I don't think anything crazy like that is going to happen in JoJolion. A possibility that people have been throwing out is like, well, one of the only things that needs to be resolved so far is like, what about Tsurugi? It was stated about 20 chapters ago that Tsurugi's stand was going through an evolution. Tsurugi's heart was changing. Tsurugi was being evil. Tsurugi hurt one of his classmates at school, and he was just doing evil shit. And now that he's gone through an exchange with Tooru, maybe Tsurugi took on some of those negative elements that Tooru had in his character that were like evil, darkness, that maybe corrupted Tsurugi's heart even more. But like, I don't know where the hell Araki was going with that. And even the flash forward that people have alluded to, because a lot of people have also been saying that, like, if this is the last chapter or the second to last chapter, when the hell is the flash forward going to happen? Like, that would mean that everything we've been seeing so far is just an illusion of Paper Moon Cane, or the flash forward was an illusion of Paper Moon Cane. And you guys know me, I really never mention the flash forward. I don't think it's healthy to keep mentioning the flash forward in terms of discussion for the chapters, because it kind of undermines everything that's happening. We're not able to really fully enjoy what's happening and what Araki's writing right now if we just keep saying like, yeah, this is cool, but how are we going to get to what Araki wrote 2 years ago? So I've really been stepping around talking about the flash forward, and like, Araki did write that about 20 chapters ago in chapter 83, where the family was totally fine, everyone was healthy, and Tsurugi was carrying Norisuke in a body bag around the Higashikata estate, and that has yet to come into fruition. We've yet to see that happen, although it was clearly stated that that was in the future. So I really don't want to even discuss it now, because I don't know how Araki is going to get there. I don't really want to acknowledge the idea that maybe Araki just is going to completely retcon that, but of course, when you have Paper Moon Cane in the mix, anything could be happening. This could be an illusion, that could have been an illusion, and we're just gonna have to wait and see. And honestly, like, it might sound shitty or like me fanboying on Araki, but like, I'd be okay with the flash forward just never being resolved. Like, maybe it was something that just happened that we didn't see off screen, like before we really started fighting Tor or something. But like, yeah, I really don't like to focus too much on the flash forward, because it just kind of gets into fan theory and how we're gonna get to that point. But I don't know. And that's another reason why this chapter has been so decisive, because it's like, did Araki write that so recently and it's just never going to be resolved? And it's something that a lot of the fans have been really banking on and really like putting a lot of time and effort into theorizing about that flash forward that's just never going to be resolved. So it is worrying where Araki was going with that and how the story is going to go from here. Because a lot of people are like, well, if Tsurugi's been alluded to having so many of these evil tendencies, like, what are we going to fight Tsurugi now? Like, we fight the head doctor and then Tsurugi gets healed from from the rock disease, and then like that would just be so weird if we've spent so much time healing Tsurugi, the curse has been broken, so much effort has been gone into helping Tsurugi that now we have to fight Tsurugi. That doesn't even make sense why we would fight Tsurugi. And even if we needed to fight Tsurugi, we could just kill him instantly because Josuke is soft and wet go beyond. So yeah, a lot of those questions aren't really adding up, and I don't really see a lot of that happening. I definitely don't see us like fighting Tsurugi or Tsurugi being evil, but then it comes into question, why was there so much buildup to Tsurugi's evil intentions? I don't know, man. And this is where I like, as much as I like JoJolion, there definitely are like major inconsistencies with characters and what Araki has been alluding to, but also the part is still not finished, so we just don't know. So I'm definitely with you guys in the way that like I'm not 100% on this part coming to a close so close. Like maybe if it ended next chapter, yeah, there would be a lot of messed up stuff like Tsurugi's character and the flash forward and all of that, and I would have a lot of questions, so we're just gonna have to wait and see. So in the next chapter, granted we don't see any Paper Moon King bullshit or the flash forward come into fruition or anything evil with Tsurugi, pretty much what I think is just going to happen is the characters being healed, Norisuke getting some attention from the ambulance people. We of course need to have answered what is Kato's fate. Is she going to live or die? So next chapter, we see how everyone, if Jobin lives, if Norisuke lives, if Kato lives, all of that, in just how Josuke's life moves on from here. And maybe a little bit more narration from Araki, sort of the themes of JoJolion, and just a little bit more wrap up on all of that. I know a lot of people want to see everything come to conclusion, like the walleyes and the flashback man and the flash forward and all those things. Honestly, I really don't give a shit. I don't think everything needs to be answered. I don't think Araki needs to give a big exposition dump and answer every question he's ever proposed. I don't think that's necessary, really. Like Araki says, this is a story about breaking a curse, and I just kind of want to see this curse broken, and I mostly want to see how Josuke's life is going to continue from here. Is he going to develop a relationship with Yasuo, which I think is very important because this part does have a lot more romantic elements in the past, and I definitely want to see like a kiss or something between Josuke and Yasuo, but shit, guys, yeah, I definitely think this part will end around chapter 110, 111, somewhere around there, so I think this is one of the final chapters of JoJolion, and I'm just very curious to see where Araki is going to go from here, and what we're going to see in chapter 109. And I'm also just getting really nervous that JoJolion potentially could be ending, and I want my thoughts on these chapters to be so prolific, and for me to have so much to say because we're so close to the ending, but like, I'm with you guys. I don't know what the hell is going on still, and I'm full of anxiety to see where this part's going to go and if it's even going to conclude in the next like 2 chapters. So, ugh. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching JoJolion Chapter 108 review. So much to discuss, so definitely get down in the comments. I will be chatting with you guys about I'll be reading your guys' comments about what you guys thought about this chapter, because I actually am really curious of if you guys think this is good or not, if you think Araki's rushing, or if things are going well, and just everything. I never thought we'd see the day where JoJolion begins to end, but it looks like we're here. So thank you guys so much for watching again. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and definitely be sure to tune in next month where we could potentially be seeing the final chapter of JoJolion. But of course, people have also raised questions logistically, like because the last chapter concluded a volume and there really couldn't be a volume release of 1 or 2 chapters. So people are saying that there's at least 2 more chapters if we want to fill a final volume, and that does make sense. So I definitely think we'll see 1 or 2 more chapters. So anyways, guys, yeah, I've said enough. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace. I'm out. I'm just going to be stressing. I'm stressed, man. JoJolion, this is making me so stressed, this ending.